There are over 6,700 existing roller coasters across the world, from AAA multi-million-dollar attractions built by the biggest manufacturers to obscure homemade coasters sitting in the middle of nowhere. And today, any one of them could be chosen. We're putting our recreation skills to the ultimate test by letting Roller Coaster Database randomly select one coaster, and whatever it picks, we must recreate it one-to-one. The layout, the trains, the station, the surroundings, everything. Today, more than any other video before, anything is on the table. Hello everyone, welcome back to TH Designs. Today we are doing something a little similar to the types of videos that we have on this channel. We do plenty of recreations, actually most recently doing a great one of Son of Beast, but today is kind of an extension of that idea of the recreation. Today we are having Roller Coaster Database select the coaster that we will be recreating. Now the caveat is of course that this is not going to be a AAA coaster that we typically do, one that's well covered and has plenty of footage and media of. There's a very solid chance that we are going to be given a coaster that is in the middle of nowhere with almost no photos or images or videos of it. And it's going to really push us to our limits when it comes to being able to recreate a coaster efficiently in Planet Coaster 2. So with the challenge set, let's jump over to Roller Coaster Database and let's see how we're going to navigate this challenge. For this challenge, everything is handled through Roller Coaster Database. That's RCDB, as I'm most likely going to refer throughout the video. RCDB is essentially the encyclopedia of roller coasters. That's probably the best way to explain it. Every manufacturer, every park, every layout, all in one place. And most importantly for this video, it lets us do a true random selection by clicking the RCDB button at the top here. When we push that button, whatever we get, we get. You can see that there's a list of over 6,700 coasters. RCDB has them all listed here. And just looking at some of these names and surfing through these randomized coasters, it's extremely low percentage chance that we get a coaster that we know of, that we've been on, anything like that. So this is truly going to be a really fun challenge. So let's press this button. Okay, it's not a family coaster, at least it doesn't appear to be. The name of it is Roller Coaster. That's not a typo, that's the actual name. I've heard of coasters called Roller Coaster. It's usually when it's the only coaster in a park. It's at Cherry Blossom Happy Garden in the Jiangsu province of China. If you actually click on the name of the coaster, you get taken to this page, which kind of covers the data points of the coaster, the basic information. So the coaster has been operating since 2013, and it's listed as a sit-down steel coaster, which that's pretty easy. Not a family coaster, which was really what I was scared of. There's about 9 photos here that if we kind of surf through, give us some pretty good images. So worst case scenario, if this is all we have to work off of, it doesn't seem like it's the end of the world. It could have been definitely much worse. These photos seem to be pretty good at kind of getting the gist. The coaster was built by this manufacturer. I'm not even going to try and take a stab at that. It's a domestic Chinese manufacturer, so very vernacular and local, which is very cool. It does mean we're going to have to get a little creative with the track style and type, but they actually have a pretty extensive portfolio within China, so I've never heard of this manufacturer, but they have a lot of coasters to their name. I have not found any YouTube footage at all of this coaster, so we don't have a POV. I can't really find too many images of it. I can't even find that many images of the park. So these 9 photos on RCDB are probably going to be all we're going to work with, which is fine. With all that said, let's jump over to Google Earth and hopefully Google Earth can help us out, because if we have it top down, then we should be set. Okay, I had to zoom out a little bit, but you have this big river here and some more kind of ponds and lakes and stuff. This strip with this really cool looking blue road is actually where the coaster sits. You see it right here. Again, kind of as we said before, it looks like it's a very small, kind of almost carnival or local park. You can see a water park, that's pretty cool, a little wave pool. Some nice little like Ferris wheel right next to the coaster, maybe a merry-go-round, some flat rides. I don't see the second coaster here, but at the very least we have the guy that we are looking at, which is right here. This is Roller Coaster. And immediately looking at the layout, it's pretty familiar, because we saw the loop and corkscrew. It's pretty reminiscent almost, just a little bit, you're going to have to kind of stretch it with me, of the Arrow corkscrews that were kind of coming out of the 70s. It's pretty much just a really small 2-circuit coaster. So of course it is very different. You have this huge helix here, which according to RCDB is 540 degrees or something like that. And the loop itself looks like a Schwarzkopf loop, so some familiarities here, and all in all, I don't think this will be too hard to recreate. So with all that said, let's jump into Planet Coaster and let's get those screens set up so that we are 100% accurate. So there we go. There are the screens placed, taken from Google Earth and scaled in Illustrator is how I personally do it, and then translated to the screens in game so that we can be 100% sure that these are to scale, so that top down, it is exactly 1-to-1. As for the actual model type, I decided to go with the Mauer and Sun track type, which is a model that exists in games with the X-Car train type that I'm just going to change to probably the Aero corkscrew trains. Those feel like they fit the best. This track type seems to be the most reminiscent of what we see in the images that are given to us. That station is going to be about 10, maybe 15 feet in the air. Then it drops down maybe 5 to 10 feet into what is essentially more or less a 180-degree turn to the right, which then heads immediately into the lift hill. So lift hill is going to be about 100 feet or so, which it's hard to tell exactly how tall the lift hill really is. So I think 90 to 100 feet is probably about right. We are now entering into that 540-degree helix, which you see from these images is going to require catwalks, which is pretty typical for a lot of coasters seen in Asia. I know in Japan they're pretty common, primarily like for earthquakes. I don't know if China's for the same reason, but we will have to recreate that. I imagine that'll be pretty difficult, but it will look really nice if we nail it. Exiting that 540-degree helix, we kind of stretch out a little bit into the path of the vertical loop, heading down maybe 50 feet or so into the vertical loop, which again, as I said earlier, I assume is probably about 50, 60 feet or so. Looking at the photos, the catwalks will extend from the helix down to the ground, and the loop itself will need some custom supporting. Exiting the loop, we then jump up maybe 45 feet or so, which is where you get a lot of that reminiscence of the Aero corkscrew models coming out of the 70s. After doing this kind of turnaround to the right, going down into a bank, we go into that 45 foot corkscrew, which has some kind of funky little custom supports. That's gonna be fun to do. It just looks like a little pipe. I don't understand how that's supposed to hold it up, but that's what it is. Then exiting that corkscrew, it's pretty easy. It just rises up maybe 10 feet or so and kind of does some turns and weaves into a finale, eventually heading straight into the brake run, which is adjacent to the loop. And that pretty much covers the entire layout. Now we're going to have to do a lot of different scenery. If we look in Google Earth here, we can talk about how we're going to actually decorate this and make it look exactly right. For the custom supports and everything, we're going to be using a lot of the photos, but Google Earth is going to be our friend when it comes to creating the sort of immediate surrounding around the coaster. We have this little blue highway road thing, lots of rivers and lakes, lots of colorful paths as well. And it looks like we have about 4 flat rides in the immediate surroundings around it. A big Ferris wheel right to the north of the coaster, even a little carousel maybe a Dodgems or a bumper cars next to that to the east, and then another flat ride that's kind of hard to tell. We're going to do our best to recreate this exactly. The station is pretty simple. There's really good photos of it in RCDB, so I imagine that won't be an issue at all. Same with the structure above the final brakes in the layout. Again, going to be a lot of custom supports pretty much for most of the coaster. The catwalks are going to be a pain. The vertical loop, I imagine, probably will be pretty easy, but I could also see it being difficult. I wanted to kind of contextualize what we're actually doing here, because there's a very good chance that most of the viewers, if not all of them, have no idea about this coaster. It's in the middle of Southeast China, and it's just a kind of little fun fair coaster that RCDB gave us. So with all those things said, I think it's now time to shift over to the final product, because I do think the next time you see this coaster, it will be done entirely. Alright everyone, welcome back. There's been plenty done for this build. This is it. This is more or less what the coaster looks like. I mean, as we know, there wasn't really that much footage or photos or images or videos or anything really helping us out here. So Google Earth was really all we had, along with those RCDB images that were attached to this coaster's profile. But all in all, I think it looks pretty nice actually. It looks pretty reminiscent of the photos that we do have. See, we do have some custom supports done in a few different places, pretty much for the entire lift hill, as well as the helix and everything except for pretty much the these straight supports. But the loop that you see here is of course custom supporting. This corkscrew support is right, like it looks so wonky, but that's technically what it looks like, and so we rock with it. I don't know. This coaster is weird, but it was very fun to make. These catwalks that you see going around the helix and eventually down to the loop, you may think that was the hardest part of this entire coaster, and it definitely wasn't fun to do. It does look really nice, I think, but I think personally the hardest thing in this entire build was actually the loop. For some reason, getting these shapes to fit perfectly in that loop profiling was pretty difficult, but I'm pretty happy with how it looks. The lift, we also had to kind of do some smoke and mirrors. So the Mauer track type that we are using does not actually have a chain lift design. If we click that here, you can see the track turns invisible. That track underneath is the Aero track, which this is a technique we've been using for like 4 videos straight, which is pretty funny. All in all, I decided to use the LSM version on this track, which if you listen, it doesn't sound like a chain lift, and in that sense it's unrealistic, but I love the way it looks. It kind of looks like how a more in-house manufacturer would create a chain lift, something a little atypical to what you're used to seeing. I think it looks pretty cool. I think in conjunction with the aero track, which is where we get that catwalk, I think it looks pretty nice. And with the custom supports and everything, I think it looks pretty good and realistic to what you see. You also see some kind of signs that I saw were attached. It was hard to make out exactly what they were. I just saw that there was some kind of print on them. It may have been Mandarin. I wasn't entirely sure. Of course, Mandarin isn't in-game, so I used these decals that kind of give, from a distance, the image of maybe being Mandarin. I don't know. I really don't know what it was here, so I kind of had to mess around with it. The aero trains that we did end up using are pretty similar to what you see in the images from RCDB. Probably as close as we're going to get. I was thinking about using the Vekoma trains, these ones right here. They kind of have a little bit more of that curved shape that you see in the images, but all in all, it's a pretty basic coaster layout. We already knew that going into this. This is a very like local carnival or fair type of coaster, which is kind of the atmosphere that we are getting here. You see all these paths. These are pretty accurate to what you see in Google Earth. A lot of different colors. There are this many flat rides, which was cool to get those little bits of details. The carousel, Ferris wheel, look like some dodgems. There was something here. I didn't know exactly what it was, but the pathing around it is pretty accurate, as well as we got that blue road, which we talked about at the very beginning. That looks pretty nice, and a lot more water around the coaster than I realized, so we got all that as well. As for the actual coaster itself, let's take a look at the stats. This is my first time seeing these. I have not looked at the stats at all. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that they're going to be pretty bad. Oh, they're not done. All right, we just finished a test. Let's see what they are. 3.21, and I think that takes the cake for being the lowest excitement rating on any coaster ever done on this channel. 1.96 fear, that's red because it's so low. The nausea is pretty good though, don't worry about that. There's going to be no worries there. As for the specific stats, we're looking at 170-second duration. Most of that's probably happening at that slow chain lift. Track length of 3,000 is pretty good actually. A 50 mile per hour max speed and a 24 mile per hour average speed. They're just fine. Maximum vertical G-force is 4.5. That's typically where we usually hang. You have to imagine that those are all happening at the bottom of this, transitioning into that loop. There are some lateral G-forces in some place, but all in all, this coaster is just eh. But we didn't make it to recreate a thrilling machine or a statistics monster. We did it to have some fun and learn about a coaster in a part of the world that typically we don't talk about when it comes to coasters. And we got to learn a little bit about the actual little fair park that it was in. The coaster itself, which may I remind you is just named Roller Coaster, and we got to do something very different on this channel. We had a lot of challenges and curveballs thrown at us. These catwalks are a great example. The custom loop, the custom really chain lift, even that little corkscrew weird thing over there. Yeah, this was very fun. I'm really curious what your guys' thoughts are on this little challenge. Of course, this can be done infinitely. There's 6,700 plus coasters out there. This is just one of them. This is absolutely a video we could do again if you guys would like to see it. So do let me know. I love hearing your thoughts, and this was a lot of fun to do. I would be very open to doing it in the future again. As for the cinematics and POV, let's jump over to that. I imagine it's going to be something short and sweet, and as usual, this will be available on the workshop via the description, so keep an eye out for that if you are interested in exploring for yourself. With all that said, I think that checks all the boxes for today's installation. Roller Coaster gave us a lot of challenges, but I think we handled them well, and very happy with this.